Well, for the most part, it helped me find peace and it helped me simplify my life so that I could handle other things and get things in order. It also gave me a place to heal and to grow and to find myself again. I don't have any regrets in doing it. There were some things that were very difficult, but I would still do it again. And it's always a learning process. So even now, 8 years later of living in a tiny house, there's still things that I try to make more efficient.
Welcome to the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast, the show where you learn how to plan, build, and live the tiny lifestyle. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Tracey Dedicatoria. Tracey's journey into tiny living began after a 23-year marriage, and her tiny house has been a sanctuary of peace, healing, and financial stability for her over the past 8 years. In this episode, Tracey shares the transformative power of simplifying your life, the unique challenges and discoveries of living off-grid, and her advice for those considering tiny living today. We also dive into the evolution of the tiny house market, including the rising costs and how to navigate the financing options. Join us as we explore Tracey's inspiring path to finding peace and strength through tiny living. But before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about an incredible opportunity that I am really excited about. Do you remember my interview with Kenton Zerbin? He's the permaculture expert who lives in an ultra-efficient off-grid tiny house in northern Alberta. Well, Kenton is offering an amazing 7-day permaculture retreat in Colombia, and I think you might be interested. Imagine spending a week in a lush, tropical paradise learning crucial skills for sustainable living. You'll discover how to choose the perfect land, understanding where to look, why certain properties are ideal, and how to make the best decision. Ken will teach you to set up your land for maximum efficiency, productivity, and even off-grid living. But that's not all. You'll dive deep into food growing techniques, including gardening, food forestry, and composting. Plus, you'll learn about innovative home designs, incorporating solar power and rainwater collection systems. This isn't just a vacation. It's a transformative experience that will change the way you think about sustainable living. Whether you're a tiny house dweller, an aspiring homesteader, or just someone who wants to live more sustainably, this retreat will give you the knowledge and skills to make it happen. The best part? Ken is offering my listeners a special 10% discount. Just use the code ETHAN at checkout. That's ETHAN. And here's a cool thing. Instead of spending money on big advertisers, Kenton is giving me a 10% kickback for each person who signs up through my link. It's a win-win-win situation. You save money, I earn a little something, and we both support an independent educator. If you want to learn more about this incredible opportunity, head over to thetinyhouse.net/Kenton. That's thetinyhouse.net/KENTON. That will redirect you over to Kenton's website. And don't forget to use the coupon code ETHAN at checkout for your 10% discount. And if you haven't listened to my full interview with Kenton yet, you can check it out at thetinyhouse.net/133. It's packed with amazing insights about permaculture and tiny living. All right, don't forget thetinyhouse.net/Kenton. Use the coupon code ETHAN when you register for the retreat. All right, let's get on with today's episode. All right, I would like to introduce Tracey Dedicatoria. She was born and raised in New York, but always wanted to return to her roots in Virginia since her grandparents were born and raised in Farmville. In 1999, she ended up on the Eastern Shore when her ex-husband was stationed at Wallops. After 23 years of a bad marriage, the tiny house gave her the ability to leave and to survive. It allowed her to become financially stable and remain on the farm. She has lived in her tiny house for 8 years now and has 3 grown children, 2 daughters, and a son. Tracey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Tracey, your tiny house journey began during sounds like a significant life change. How did embracing the tiny lifestyle help you navigate that transition?
Well, for the most part, it helped me find peace. And it helped me simplify my life so that I could handle other things and get things in order. It also gave me a place to heal and to grow and to find myself again. I don't have any regrets in doing it. There were some things that were very difficult, but I would still do it again. And it's always a learning process. So even now, 8 years later of living in a tiny house, there's still things that I try to make more efficient, try to make more improvements, make things more comfortable. So it's a constant process of making your space more comfortable and more livable for you. And it does change as time goes on, as you age and so forth.
Yeah.
So, like for the first few years, I didn't have air conditioning, and that was really hard. And I had like four fans up in the loft, all blowing on me at the same time. And then I finally got air conditioning and I was all excited. I got a mini split thinking that I was going to be cool up there, but no, the air upstairs is still like a 10-degree difference from downstairs. So when it's really hot, even with the air conditioning, I have to sleep downstairs. And I was not expecting that.
Yep. Yep. I can echo that about the AC. It just does not seem to want to make its way up to the loft.
Mm-mm.
So you've mentioned, that you've faced several challenges when you first moved into your house, particularly with off-grid living. Can you share any of those specific obstacles that you encountered and how you overcame them?
Absolutely. One of the things I didn't realize is that the water pressure in a
Mm-hmm.
tiny house is much lower than the water pressure in a regular house.
Okay.
So when I first got my water heater and the plumber put it in, who was a professional,
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't get it to work. And I still couldn't take a hot shower. So I was really frustrated. I was like, I want to take a hot shower. And we finally figured out that it was a pressure issue. So luckily, the off-grid water heater that I had a setting where you could set it to low pressure.
Okay.
But most regular commercial water heaters that you put in a home are not going to have that option. So
Right.
you have to be really careful about the appliances and the things that you select to use in a tiny house. So once we did that, then I was able to take a hot shower. But then I got like a little portable washing machine, which I was so excited I was going to be able to wash my a little bit of clothes at
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, I just couldn't get enough water pressure for it to work properly. So I had to give it away. So I washed my clothes at my son's house.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a small dryer that I use sometimes, but it is very small. So you can't put very much in there.
Right.
Also, to vent it, I had to stick the tube out the window. So I put the dryer under a window.
All right. All right. Yeah, I mean, the challenges that you're sharing, I mean, so many of us face them, and yet they can feel so unique because they are so specific to each tiny home. But, one that I'm hearing you hit on is just that the appliances that you put in a tiny home, they're not always designed for a tiny home, and they don't always work the same way as the appliances that you would find in a single family home or an apartment or a condo.
Exactly. So small doesn't mean compatible with a tiny house. You
Right.
have to look at all the logistics of how it works and so forth.
Yeah.
And then for the heater,
Mm.
I tried to use a camping heater, like you would use in a tent, the
Oh, wow.
propane
Okay.
at first, because I was so desperate. But the fumes, because a tiny house is more insulated than an RV would be or a tent would be, it made me sick. So the fumes were building up. So that was not an option. So I had to get rid of that. And that's when I got, help me, the thing that goes on the wall, the propane, the one that they use in sailboats.
Oh, the Dickinson.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Thank you so
Yep.
much. I got that. And that was great, except it doesn't have a thermostat. So you're either really, really hot or really, really cold. So I would use it to take the chill off, and I
Yep.
wouldn't leave it on all day, just when I come in,
Yep.
and then turn it off once the house got to a certain temperature.
Yep. So it's I'm smiling hearing you say this because, I'm looking at your house and I'm guessing that it's the tumbleweed fencel design.
Yes, it was,
Yeah.
built by Perch and Nest, but it's a similar design to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So my tiny house was based also, I started off with a set of fencel plans and kind of went off the rails from there. But, there's like a certain era of tiny house design. And like, I also started off with a Newport Dickinson heater and had the same issue as you. It's like, you want to leave the house during the day and go to work, and you don't want the pipes to freeze, but you also don't want it to be, burning up your entire tank of propane. So
Right.
I quickly figured that out as well. Are you still on the Newport heater, or do you have like
No,
version 3?
I have the mini split. So the mini split is both a heater and an air conditioner. So last
Mm-hmm.
winter was the first one. Of course, it was a very mild winter, I must add.
Yeah.
But I only used the mini split
Nice.
for heat. Now, the winter before that, we did have some below zero.
Yeah.
So I would kick the Dickerson on to take the chill off for a little while, get the temperature up real fast,
Okay.
and then turn it off and have the mini split maintain that. Because the mini split you can set at whatever temperature you want,
Right. Right.
74 or whatever you want. And I do like that. But off grid, you can't run that, you
No.
know. So I had to use a generator. So at first I got the air conditioning and I got a generator in before I got electricity. So I was running the air conditioning with the generator.
Uh-huh.
That was the dumbest thing I did because I burned up so much gasoline, and gasoline is so expensive
Yeah.
compared to propane.
Yeah.
So that was not a good idea. And then eventually I did get electricity. So I was able to use it when I needed to.
Nice. Nice. So the reason that we connected initially is that I read an article that you wrote for Tiny House magazine a couple of months ago. I'm not sure what month it came out, but it was issue number 139.
It was July.
July.
Mm-hmm.
The title of the article is "My Tiny Life: Survival Strength, Finding Peace." And your article touches on the personal growth you experienced through this process. I'm curious, how has living in a tiny house changed your perspective on just life and what you truly need in it?
I feel less stressed because things are very simple
Mm-hmm.
and right at my fingertips and easy to maintain. Um, from a financial standpoint, really helped me get out of debt, helped me put my kids through college.
Mm-hmm.
After a divorce where I had a lot of debt to get that all under control. And if I had had a regular mortgage of, $1,000 or $1,500 a month, I would not have been able to do that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to keep the horse, and all that type of stuff. And that was something that was very significant to me. So I think tiny house living does give you the ability to maybe have something that you wouldn't be able to otherwise have. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you always wanted a sailboat, or you always wanted to take a cruise around the world or something like that. Having that big mortgage makes it much more difficult to achieve that. So
Yeah.
in that respect, it really did help me from a financial standpoint.
Nice.
But now they are much more expensive than when I got mine.
Yes, they are.
And if I were to try to get what I have now, I couldn't get it. And that really concerns me because I feel like for the future of tiny houses, that's really going to hurt us. And change the market completely,
Mm.
because I'd like to just have it go for, simple people that are just trying to do certain things or to simplify their life or in certain situations. So I wonder how we could bring the price down of tiny
Mm.
houses to reach more people.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm curious, if you don't mind sharing, what did your house cost you to build 8 years ago, and do you have a
Well,
sense of what it would cost now?
Perch and Nest built it.
Okay.
It was a model that they had taken all over the place. It wasn't like a custom built house that I had done from
Okay.
scratch.
Okay.
Um, and it it was a little bit higher than what I qualified for my loan.
Mm-hmm.
So I had them take some things out that were significant, probably not legal, but they took out the electric water heater because I was going to put a propane one in.
Uh-huh.
They took out the toilet, and they took out there was a mini split in there. They took that out so that I could bring the price down to 42.5.
Wow.
Um, but it had nothing in there. It had no stove. It had no Dickerson heater. Um, nothing. It was just very, very simple. So when I got there, the first thing, of course, was I wanted the hot water heater so I could take a hot shower.
Yeah.
And then the regular heater went in, and then the stove. So those were the three things that I put money into it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do think you save money by doing that. If you get a house that's very simple, doesn't have everything in it, do your own appliances, have your local guy put in your water heater, put in your propane heater, whatever, because there's contractors around that locally that will do that for you. Um, So that I think helped me. And then the off grid part. So I probably put in another 10 grand, after that.
Yeah.
But if I were to get what I have now, you're talking about 80.
Wow. Yeah.
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 And it's
No.
only a 20. It's only a 8 by 20.
Yeah. The prices have gone up, and I just, out of, curiosity's sake, I just pulled up like an inflation calculator just to see, 42.5 in 2016, what that would cost in 2024 dollars, and it came to 55,743. So, I think you're right about, a tiny house like that would be more like 80 now. And I don't know if it's because the business models of these companies have had to adjust just to stay profitable, or is it that the building materials themselves have, gone up in price more than the average? I'm honestly not sure.
I think it's bad that they do everything custom, frankly.
Yeah.
Like where you have to do everything custom cookie cutter. I feel like they should build a base house and then let the person decide how they want to finish it.
Yep.
I think that would cut the cost significantly. And then my house was also built with recycled materials. You do know that, right?
I did not know
Like,
that.
so Perch and Nest, years ago when they first started, they used to do a lot of remodeling of old barns and houses. And what they would do is they would take the materials from the remodels and they would store them and they would use them to build the tiny houses.
Wow.
So like the cedar shingles on my house, the beams, they all came out of old buildings. And, I don't have a problem with that. I think we need to do more of that, recycling of materials to build.
Yeah. I mean, doing that though is also, time and labor intensive. So it's always a balance. So you're kind of touching on this, that you've seen the tiny house market evolve over the past 8 years. I'm curious, what advice would you give to someone considering a tiny house today, given the current market conditions and given, the challenges that you've faced with your house?
Take your time, shop around, see a lot of different places, different houses. Make sure that it's built by somebody that has experience and quality. Where Perch and Nest, he was a master carpenter. I was very comfortable with that. And it has had some inspections of some sort. And just go with your gut.
Yeah.
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 I would say as well. There's some beautiful ones out there, but they are expensive. Then the financing is tricky too, because you can't finance it like a regular house.
Yep.
So you have to finance it in a much shorter term. So your payments are going to be bigger. And that affected me too.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing that's crazy, Ethan, is like I finance with USAA, right?
Okay.
But they don't finance tiny houses anymore. So like today, if I wanted to get a loan from them, I couldn't get it. So I would like to see more lenders be more tiny house friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another huge challenge in this industry, is that it seems that the way builders are able to offer financing is through RV loans, which are, much, much higher interest rates and much shorter,
Term. Yep.
more shorter terms. So what should be a really affordable 15 or 20-year mortgage ends up being a fairly unaffordable, like 5 or 6 year RV loan.
Yep. And that's going to hurt us. If we want to keep tiny houses alive,
Yeah.
we've got to make some changes, and then the structural design, I guess you're saying it's the era though. So the era when you and I were getting tiny houses, that was the typical style, but now they just seem like boxes.
Yeah.
Like are very RV looking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we both have, that gabled roof where the peak of the roof is in the middle.
Yes.
And it seems like it's very rare to see a house that has that design. There are, for many reasons, if you do that single pitch roof, it's simpler to build. But then you also get that high side where you can put up a set of stairs rather than have to climb up a ladder. That's actually something that I kind of wish that I had done.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that shed roof unlocks the staircase possibility a lot. It's not like you can't have a staircase in a gabled roof tiny house, but it's going to have to be right in the middle, which is not ideal.
I'd like to see more with bedrooms downstairs too.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
and those
for
are
age.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned in the article the importance of considering, long-term accessibility in tiny house design.
Yes.
How do you think the tiny house movement can better address the needs, of people who are aging or differently abled individuals?
I would like to see, like I said, more bedrooms downstairs
Yeah.
and your door widths, to accommodate at least 36 inches.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but it can be done. I believe it can be done with design. It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I interviewed probably a year or two ago the founder of this company called Wheelpad that specializes in building tiny houses on wheels, but tiny houses on wheels that are completely accessible. And the idea is that it adds an accessible bedroom and bathroom to an existing house so that a loved one is able to stay in their home.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a really cool
That's
concept.
cool. That is cool.
Yeah.
What's the name of the company that's doing that?
It's called Wheelpad.
Wheelpad. Okay,
Yep.
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah. And I could tell people that if anyone's listening who is interested in hearing that interview or seeing the pictures or anything, that would be episode 114 of this show. So you can go to thetinyhouse.net/114 and you could read the transcript. You can listen to the episode, or you can just scroll and kind of read the description and see all the pictures. They're really beautiful too.
The other thing I love about tiny houses is they have so many windows. So
Yes.
wherever I turn, I see the outdoors.
Yes.
So my house has like 13 windows. And my regular house that I lived in, that I raised my children in, has less than that. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild. Yeah. Yeah, I share that. That it's just so bright in the tiny house.
And that's important with your design too. They have just lots of windows so you don't feel so enclosed, and you never have to turn a light on during the day because there's plenty of sunshine coming in and plenty of airflow. Like
Yep.
right now, I don't need my air conditioning. Here in Virginia, it's like high 70s.
Yep.
I'm very comfortable because there's always a cross breeze in the loft.
Nice. So have you ever had any issues with like the legality of the house, like parking it on the farm or anything like that?
Well, the main thing you have to be careful of is like it varies by state
Yeah.
where you can discharge your gray water and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an existing dwelling on the property, which I still have the other house that my son lives in, it makes it a lot easier. So I encourage people to do that. You can also cover it with the insurance can be covered with the same house, but I have tiny house insurance specifically.
Yep. Yep.
But as far as parking it, no, not because I'm in a very rural county where there's not a lot of regulations. I'm not in a city or anything like that. And I'm on a farm, large parcel where I'm not really bothering anybody. Nobody can see me.
Uh-huh.
It would probably be different if I tried to do it in a town or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the toilets, okay, all the compost toilet and the Laveo dry flush. I have a Laveo dry flush now.
Oh, okay.
I did have a compost. It's a lie that they tell you it doesn't stink. It's a lie. It stinks. Yes, it stinks. Okay, so what I do is I take those Febreze plugins
Uh-huh.
and I take the tops off. And when I'm not using the commode, I sit them inside of it.
Okay.
And that actually cuts the odor tremendously. Because then I put the lid down so it kind of like, keeps it out. But otherwise, yeah, it's the compost really smelled.
Interesting.
So I couldn't do that.
I have a compost toilet in my tiny house, and my experience has been that the smell isn't bad, but
oh man, you must be doing something better than what I did.
Well, there's a lot of different types of compost toilets for tiny houses, and not all are created equal, I suppose.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. But I like the Laveo dry flush.
Yeah.
I just push the button and it seals it up and take it to the dump.
Yep, and that's great. There's there are options for everybody for how involved you want to be in waste management in your tiny house.
Yes. And I did also install a reverse osmosis filter from Culligan.
Okay.
because I had some nitrates in my water, and nothing else will get that out. That was a little tricky because I had to use the one that's tankless under my sink with my big 25-gallon water tank.
Mm.
But we did it, and I love it.
Nice. So it's a tankless reverse. And now, does that do RO for your entire water supply, or
No,
just for
only for
drinking?
drinking and cooking. So there's an additional spout there.
Got it. Got it.
And I wish they had made the sink deeper,
Hmm.
because when
Mm.
you're washing dishes and stuff or rinsing fruit or something like that, the water always goes on the counter because it's not deep enough.
Interesting. Interesting.
So lots of little things, that you kind of learn along the way.
Yeah. Do you have, it sounds like you're just constantly improving your tiny house and finding
Yes.
ways to make your life there more convenient or easier. I'm curious what, do you have any projects kind of on the horizon that you're hoping to tackle in the house?
Well, we just built a deck,
Oh,
which is
nice.
with a bench, and I enclosed the bottom like it was on cement blocks, but
Mm-hmm.
I put cement blocks all around it on the
Uh-huh.
bottom now, and I planted a ground cover, which is like a really pretty vine with purple flowers.
Uh-huh.
So that's covering up all of the bottom part,
Uh-huh.
so you won't really see the trailer or anything. So it looks more like a regular house. And then landscaping. Also, carpenter bees are a pain,
Hmm.
um, because a lot of times the wood that is underneath around the rim of the roof is not treated and it's not painted. So they
Mm.
like to go in there.
Yep. Yep.
So that has been a big problem. If I were to get one or build one again, I would definitely not have that design because it definitely attracts those carpenter bees. And they got all in my wall one time
Oh my gosh.
upstairs, and it drove me absolutely nuts because I could hear the buzzing, buzzing, buzzing.
Yeah. That sounds really unpleasant. It's funny. Like, I have had issues with mice in my house. I've definitely had ants and bees too. It's a constant battle.
Yes, I haven't had mice though. I guess because we probably got plenty of snakes eating the mice, but
Good.
I haven't seen any
I'm
mice.
glad. I'm happy for you. Oh. Well, looking back on your journey, what's been the most unexpected benefit of living in a tiny house?
Oh, people don't come and live with you and never leave. To be honest. And when I first got it, that was when my kids were just, moving out of the nest, each one.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna make it so they can't come back and live with mom. There is no space for them to live with me long term. And it kind of helped them find their own way a little bit better, I
That's
think.
awesome. That's awesome.
Or
Like
if you
a
have a friend, an unwelcome house guest, they're not gonna stay forever.
yeah.
But I have had house guests there, and we've had a lot of fun. One of my friends that I grew up with since middle school stayed with me for a week, and we did fine in the tiny house, and we had a ball.
Mm-hmm.
And then my daughters have stayed there, and a
Nice.
big dog has stayed there. So
All right. All right. Yeah. So you've had some guests. Well, one thing that I like to ask all my guests is, do you have any resources, anything that helped you, kind of on your journey to tiny that you'd like to share? Just really open-ended question. Could be books or YouTube channels or really anything.
I did a lot of research. One of the
Uh-huh.
things I liked was Renogy. They do
Hmm.
a lot of off-grid stuff,
Okay.
and I bought a couple of their battery charging packs. One that's a really big one that I can plug a regular outlet into and
Mm-hmm.
charge my cell phone, my laptop, everything at one time. Because in the tiny house, you're not going to have a lot of outlets to do too many things at one
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So but anything that I decide to get, I research it thoroughly, and
Yep.
I read and look at it. Because it is a challenge because it is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
then also, I used to have to take like jugs of water and pour them into my 25-gallon tank, which was really labor intensive. And then I had a pump that I would do it with. So, one of the best gadgets I got from the RV people was it's like a thing that you screw directly on the house, and it has a tube that
mm,
goes directly to the hose. So, you don't have to hold it there, but you have to watch it as it fills because you don't want to
you could
overfill it.
overfill your tank.
Exactly. So I'll turn it on and then I'll run in the house and I'll watch the tank. And then just before it gets to the very top,
Yep.
I run outside and turn it off. But that has been a wonderful accessory.
Yeah. So is your house completely fed by the tank? Like you have to fill the
Yes.
tank for your, okay.
Yes. I think they call that boondocking.
Yep. Sure.
The RV people call it
Yeah.
boondocking.
RV people call it boondocking. Well, anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners? Just any other insights or lessons learned?
I'd just like to encourage anybody that wants to try the tiny house thing to go for it. Don't be afraid. Just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a learning process. Reach out to other people that have done it and other resources to get you through it. But it is well worth it, and you will enjoy it.
Nice. Well, Tracey, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. It was really great to finally get to meet you.
Yes, thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much to Tracey Dedicatoria for being a guest on the show today. You can find the show notes for this episode, including a complete transcript, links, and resources at thetinyhouse.net/306. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/306. And don't forget to check out Kenton Zurban and all of his permaculture offerings. You can get a quick shortcut over to his website at thetinyhouse.net/Kenton. That's thetinyhouse.net/KENTON. And if you do end up signing up for that permaculture retreat, don't forget to use the coupon code ETHAN, that's ETHAN, when you check out for a 10% registration discount. Well, that's all for this week. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast.